jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
So we are here to do another exclusive interview, and this time it is J.R. Bookwalter. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Cam. How are you? Thanks for having me.
J.R. Bookwalter. So, everyone, I just know you guys have heard those names. If you haven't heard of Kevin J. Lindemuth or David D. Contal, Fred Ellen Ray, Joe Norsky, you've heard Lindemuth. So,
You're in the wrong place if you haven't heard of those names.
so getting a boost thanks to Sam Raimi on The Dead Next Door. You might also know him for Ozone, Robot Ninja, and Witchhouse 1 and 2. It's just been a long time VHS era director, producer, and just all around just very cool guy. So
Yeah. It's been keeping busy over the years, I guess.
yes. So I see that you still are just you got your blog and Twitter feed just constantly blowing up. I saw that the movie you produced, Bloodletting, is getting some kind of restoration.
Yeah, that's the one project I just finished, was restoring that from the original Camera Masters, and now it's out on Blu-ray, which is, I would have never in a million years thought would have happened, 25 years ago when it was made, but here we are.
Yeah, basically the Blu-ray companies have figured out, take away all the video store favorites of some kind and give them a higher def release, and to cash in on it, you add special features and other exclusives. There's a way to personalize it for everyone's liking and conventions. What just going back to that a little bit, just backtracking, which of your movies do you think you just got the most attention for?
Well, I mean, The Dead Next Door for sure. I mean, just because it was, the Sam Raimi mystery involvement, and that was my first feature. I made it at a young age. It was shot on Super 8. Bruce Campbell did a couple of voices, and I mean that one by far is, if you don't know, but it's funny because I say that, but then I think at the same time there's different crowds that know me for different things, I guess. And I guess some, like, there's Full Moon fans that know me because I did 2 of the Witchhouse sequels, and there's the shot on video crowd that knows me from making those movies, and then I guess everybody else would probably know me from Dead Next Door, the zombie fans and the sort of more classic gore movie fans. So I've done, I have my fingers in a little bit of everything, but I'd say Dead Next Door is the one that most people would remember, just because a lot of people of a certain age, saw that artwork with the muzzle on the zombie's face on the video store shelf back in the VHS days. And I hear that from so many people at conventions and things that, oh my gosh, I remember I was a kid and I saw that on the shelf and scared me so much. And it's like, no, that's cool that people remember it. So,
well, no, that's so true, because you were at that point embracing what VHS era often was. If you just could not get ticket sales, then you embraced the video store shelf and private festival screenings, and you embraced everything that you could. And You definitely were there in terms of have the poster be as big a star as the movie itself.
Well, it's funny because I kind of missed the boat on the drive-in era. By the time I started making movies, that was waning or over, and I really, to a large degree, Dead Next Door was started in 1985, but didn't actually get finished until 1989, and it was another year, 1990, before it ever saw the light of day. And by that point, I think even the home video thing was kind of on the decline. So it's funny that it wound up in so many. It was really a grassroots thing that it was in video stores at all, because it was distributed. The company that originally distributed it was kind of outside of the main, what would be called the mainstream. So just the fact that it got out at all is sort of a miracle, because it was really on that cusp of where the home video business was kind of starting to go in the toilet a little bit too.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing compared to what it is now, where there are no video stores, of course, but, or very few. But yeah, I mean, I kind of, unlike people like Dave Dakota and Fred Olen Ray, those guys really got to surf on that, market, right? They hit it right at the right time, where there was just nothing but money to be made. By the time I got to it, it was like scraps. There wasn't much left, but I managed to eke out a career over, 35 plus years or whatever anyways, despite that. So
yeah, that's a feat. And so it helped that, again, you're just working with all kinds of independent filmmakers, and you're just becoming a star in your own right. Everyone's like, yeah, go to Bookwalter. He knows something,
Well, to me, it was kind of like, I had the good fortune of meeting Sam Raimi, and he got behind my first movie. I mean, when I first approached him, I was just trying to be a production assistant on Evil Dead 2. That was my goal. And he was the one that sort of said, looked at some of my short films and said, well, you should be making a feature. Why don't you go make a feature? And I was like, oh, well, I hadn't really thought about that. I've done tons of short films, but, so I think to me, it was just kind of a way to pay it forward. I tried to, I obviously did not have the money and the pull that Sam had, but I was able to at least help people as much as, as possible over the years to get their start as well. So I like to pay it forward, I guess.
Right. And they thank you for it, hopefully.
Yeah, I think so.
So, just out of the various names you worked with, Matthew Jason Walsh, David A. Wagner, Brett Kelly, John Tracy, Neil Marshall Stevens, do you have any particular favorites that just if they were just ring your phone right now, you just would instantly say yes,
Well, I mean, they were all such different experiences. Like, I mean, Matthew Jason Walsh comes to mind just because, we're now have this Bloodletting Blu-ray, and he wrote and directed and produced that movie, for my label back in the day. And we had a long history prior to that of, he had written scripts for me and had acted in some stuff. And he kind of got to be a whiz behind the scenes, doing music scores for a lot of the movies and even visual effects and things like that. So he was one of those go-to guys. There was a handful of people at the time. So he would probably stick out, as one of those guys for sure. Dave Wagner, unfortunately, passed away about a year and a half ago, but he was another one of those guys that was always there. When he came to me with the script for Ozone, with the intention of, he wanted to make the movie and wanted me to get involved in helping him. And I read the script on the way out to a convention in Los Angeles, a road trip that I was taking, and fell in love with the script. And I came back and I said, let me make this. I want to make this thing, and we can work on it together. And he actually was, I think, relieved, because it was kind of a monumental thing on his shoulders that he wasn't sure if he could take on, but he got to do it, and live vicariously through me and making the movie. So, I mean, we did many other things together. He shot Bloodletting and worked on the crew of Polymorph, co-produced that movie. So we did a number of things together over the years. But yeah, it's nice to work. I like to work with the same people as much as I possibly can. until they get burned out or you get burned out, I guess, either one. But yeah, it's kind of a neat way to do it.
Totally. And you cut up so many trailers and promotional material. Did you just were you already doing a lot of that like during college, or were you just?
No, in fact, that was really started. I would just do odd jobs in between movies, because the thing is, especially at this level, you're making stuff for so cheap, you're not earning enough money to make that your first job. So you learn, I learned very early on that, like I had skills in post-production and editing and things like that other producers would be interested in. So I was able to sort of parlay that into working, doing work for other people.
You're never not editing or helping out or doing second unit directing or
well, I mean,
writing.
The thing is, if you want to survive, you got to stay busy. And I can't. There's been various points throughout the years where maybe I was able to survive on, like when I was working for Full Moon, I worked for them for 5 years, and that started as a post-production gig and eventually led into making a bunch of movies for them. And that was very good money comparable to what I had done before. But, when there's not money involved or, you're trying to do your own stuff, then you're kind of working for other people just to keep the bills paid and keep the bill collectors away from the door and whatever you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you're still you're still working in the, rather than go and sling pizzas or drive pizzas around or now they, I guess, DoorDash and things like that. But rather than do that, I figured, well, I might as well, stay within the realm of what I'm trying to do. Or I've always tried to do that. I mean, it's not like I've never had a day job here and there as over the years, but thankfully I've, been able to make a living mostly working in the movie stuff.
By all means. So when was your first convention? It seems like you've just been very active.
It actually was probably in the early 90s, and it started because there's a big convention in New Jersey that's still going on called Chiller Theater. The guy who ran that show had another show, which I can't remember the name of, before Chiller Theater, and Dave Dakota had been invited out as a guest. So he decided to come to the show, but they had given him a table, but he didn't want to work the table. So he said, if you want to come out, you can have the table and you can sell our, the tapes that we were doing and stuff like that at the time. So I think that had to have been probably 91 or 92, maybe. I don't know. Maybe
of them.
yeah. So and so that really kind of jump started that. And then I started to figure out, there's these conventions all over the country. And back in the day, Fangoria had one of the biggest, shows, Weekend of Horrors. And you could buy a table and go and throw all your tapes on it, and lo and behold, people would buy them. So that became a sort of conduit to, have more direct contact with the people who instead, the collectors who instead of just renting, they were actually buying the stuff. And that led into, having a mail order business, and then doing big mass mailings of a little newsletter that I did, and which ultimately sort of snowballed into a full magazine that we were doing, and then it had ads inside the magazine to sell the videos. So, and it's not so different. It's not so different now. Now I've parlayed all of that experience into this Make Flick service that I'm doing, and that's basically, my full-time gig at this point. Is just running that, and it's much the same thing. It's just the only difference is we're mostly selling Blu-rays, and it's not just my stuff. I've involved other filmmakers' labels as well. So
very cool. So
yeah,
and like you said, you were going shifting right through the Fangoria era where that was free publicity for everyone and fandom overnight. And more or less, would you say that this just gave you a good idea of how to be, just kept reminding you, hey, you're your own businessman. You are your own, your career is in your very hands, Well,
that's the thing. At this level, if you want to make movies, you kind of have to be a businessman or make a business out of it. I mean, I think a lot of filmmakers don't have that don't have that in them. They just want to make the movie and then, not deal with it. But with me, it was A, about creative control, B, about, controlling your destiny and your financial future and whatever. I mean, there were many reasons why I wanted to do it. I was just consider myself a pretty resourceful person, and it was part of my survival tactic, I guess, was to make a business out of it. I mean, it's led me down some paths where I didn't necessarily want to go. For a long time, I was just a distributor, and I had set that up with the intention of making movies that I could then have an outlet to sell them. And what really happened is then I wound up just selling other people's stuff and never having the opportunity to make the movies that I wanted to make, because it's, that's a lot of work, and you can't just establish the business and then go off for a few months, make a movie, and then come back and pick up where you left off. It doesn't really work that way. So, so it wasn't always wine and roses, certainly, but I like working for myself. I don't, I've worked for other people plenty over the years, but I prefer to do my own thing and be in control of my own destiny. And, that's what embracing the business side of it allowed me to do that, I guess. It's just, even though you have to learn it as you go, because I certainly didn't have a business background. I wanted to make movies. That was my thing when I was young, but.
For sure. Well, and I saw that you had worked on some other music videos among other things, but whatever happened to when Full Moon was developing The Mummy Reborn? It seemed like that was just one other movie you were developing, and it just never took off.
Yeah, I guess what happened, they had done two before that. One was Werewolf Reborn, which Jeff Burr directed, which was pretty neat. That was sort of established that series. He was going to remake, all the classic monsters. And then Dave Dakota had done Frankenstein Reborn, which I was basically hired to edit, and then ultimately got so busy at Full Moon that I had to hire a couple of guys that were working with me to finish the edit, because I couldn't even have time to do it. So Mummy Reborn was supposed to be the third part of that, and we had a script ready to go. We had conceptual sketches. It was getting close to being made. And then I think what happened was Charlie had released the first two and was kind of, Charlie Band, was looking at the numbers of the first two and just decided he didn't want to continue that series, because they didn't, they never did go back and make any more of them. So I think that was kind of abandoned. And then he was like, well, what else can we do? Let's do, because those were shorter. They were like 45 minutes or something. They weren't full features. But that ultimately led into me directing Witchhouse 2 for him. And then, that sort of snowballed into producing a bunch of other features for him as well.
Okay. Well, that's very enlightening. Sorry it didn't work out, but hey, still.
Yeah, that would have been I'm a big fan of mummies. That's one of my favorite, classic monsters. So I was really excited to do that. I was disappointed when it didn't pan out, but of course, the consolation prize was, oh, well, you're going to make a movie anyway. So it's like, okay, well, that's fine. Maybe someday they'll drag the script out and do it. I don't know.
So you've always have Romero and just John A. Russo fans kind of kept discovered you as well because of your loose connections with them?
Yeah, I mean, the Romero connection, obviously the Dead Next Door was, as literal of a love letter to Romero's
totally.
zombie films as you can get. I mean, it was, I think it, I know some people maybe don't like all the self-referential stuff where it's, the characters named after horror movie filmmakers or things like that. But I think a lot of people just connected with it because it's obviously not a Romero movie, but it's probably one of the closer things you can get to that sort of genre compared to the Italian zombie movies or whatever. They're certainly their own animal, but, but yeah, I mean that, and Romero himself, I managed to give him a copy of the movie at some point, and he, really found it quite endearing and liked it quite a bit. And that came about because I had met John Russo at a convention. I would think he had the table next to me. It was a Fangoria show, as a matter of fact. And I started to get associated with him, and then he and I did some work together. We did a documentary on Night of the Living Dead for the 25th anniversary, which has since been remastered and re-released on Blu-ray. It's called Reflections on the Living Dead now. But so we did a bunch of stuff together. I distributed some of his movies. This was back still in the VHS day. So yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh's only a couple hours from me, so that was very influential to have been raised in the area that I was, and knowing that stuff was going on so close to me. And I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh out of high school, for college. I was an extra in Day of the Dead during that time. So Pittsburgh has always been like a second home for me. So to have any association with those guys was pretty cool.
That's a great blessing. And did you feel like a lot of your internet interviews kind of kept your fandom alive?
Well, I mean, before the internet, it was print, and I have 2 or 3 big boxes of it's amazing how much press these movies used to get in all the different fanzines. You had like Draculina magazine and Film Threat Video Guide, and all this stuff from years ago.
Everything's digital. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like funny because when people do something now, like they'll interview me or whatever, and then it's usually up the next day or within a couple of days or whatever. And I'm like, boy, I remember the days when you would do like a magazine interview and it would be literally months before you would get a copy of that magazine. It's just funny how everything is so immediate now. But yeah, I mean, that the internet has been a great sort of equalizer in that regard, because it's just it makes it that much easier for people to find these smaller movies. So I mean, in that regard, it's been great.
Stellar.
Even though it's not always been positive, I mean, there's certainly people have I've in the past read many negative reviews of my movies, probably thankfully more positive than negative, but it's made everybody a critic, of course. Yeah, you go on the IMDb, look up any movie, somebody's got something to say about any movie, you know what I mean? And there's plenty of haters that hate even, the best movies. So yeah, I eventually, just somewhere along the line, literally just got too busy I used to read them all, good, bad, or indifferent. And now I just don't pay any attention to it at all. And it's not because I've built up thick skin over the years. So regardless of even a bad review, I'm just like, I shrug my shoulders, walk away. It's like, what can I do? I did what I did. That's it. But I don't even have time to read most of it anymore, because it's just, there's so much out there. And, I'll run across, if I run across something or whatever, I have a lot of, ironically, podcasts. There's guys that always, talk about my movies on different podcasts and stuff.
Yeah.
And those are fun to listen to when I can, but I sometimes I forget about them or whatever, and then I stumble across them months later. So it's just, I mean, it's nice that there's so many people talking about this stuff after so many years. Some of these movies are pushing, 40 years old at this point. So
yeah,
it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I've seen some people refer to Zombie Cop and even Ozone as just fun, underrated indie zombie films. So, I mean,
I think most people get it. I mean, it's just, I think the movies are actually treated better now than they were at the time of release. I mean, Ozone maybe is an exception, because Ozone, right out of the gate, people seem to gravitate towards just because it was shot on video, but it was so unique to that, to compared to what everything else that was being made. And it seemed to inspire a lot of other, people who were picking up a camcorder it was sort of like pushing everybody to do a little bit better. It's like, yeah, we can make these things look better and feel bigger and, make them more cinematic. Just because it's shot on video doesn't mean it has to be like a soap opera.
And didn't that get seen in a few theaters, like limited screen?
Well, we premiered that movie actually before it was completely finished. I was mostly done, but it premiered at a convention called Zombie Jamboree that was the 25th anniversary of Night of the Living Dead. It was the first time all those people were together. Romero, Russo, Russ Streiner, all those guys. But it was
sweet.
A huge convention. I mean, this was in 1993, and they screened it there. And it's funny because I go to conventions, now these days, and you screen something, you're lucky if you get 50 people in there watching, or or less. But that was like literally like packed house. There was standing room only. I mean, there must have been 3 or 4 or 500 people in there probably. I mean, it's you just don't see that anymore at conventions. You know, most people don't want to sit down at a convention. They're afraid they're going to miss something or whatever. But that show, for whatever reason, we screened Ozone. Everybody was there. And I mean, not everybody, but you know, it was packed, and the response was very good. So that made me think, okay, well, we're on to something here. So,
and have you ever even been recognized, like at a video store, or did your movies get any kind of fanfare on cable TV?
I actually I was personally recognized a couple of years ago in a Walmart. Believe it or not, like some guy, I'm like just shopping with my family, and this guy comes up to me. He's like, "Are you J.R. Bookwalter?" I'm like, "Yeah." I thought I was going to get a subpoena or something, but here he was a guy that was a fan of the stuff, and we just happened to shop in the same store, which is cool. You know, I mean, it was funny, but you know, I've been to a bunch of different places. About 3 years ago, in the New York, New Jersey area, we did a bunch of screenings of Dead Next Door and Robot Ninja. And there was a pretty good turnout for those. I mean, you know, the stuff I work with this company AGFA, who does theatrical distribution for a lot of different labels, but they have all of my stuff as well. So I don't even know until afterwards, like I'll, you know, get a check or whatever, and it'll say, "Oh, Robot Ninja screened here, and here's your, you know, fee for it." I'm like, "Oh, I had no idea." You know, it's funny that the stuff plays and you just don't even know where it's playing. There was a screening. I think it was the, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank now. Alamo Drafthouse did a screening of Ozone in Virginia somewhere, but Patton Oswalt showed up to host the night. And nice. I wish I had video of it, because apparently everybody just had a blast, and he was, you know, came up with some very witty comments about the movie and stuff. But it was kind of funny. I was like, wow, that's very cool. I didn't know about it literally until people were posting on Instagram and Facebook and stuff about it that night. I was like, wow, that's neat.
That is cool. So, would you also say that because of these various associations and this various screenings, that in many ways you're just kind of just become an unofficial legend because of that?
Well, I don't know about that, but I think it's just because I always believed Roger Corman was a legend. I'm not comparing myself to Roger Corman. I'm just using it as an example. Roger Corman is a legend strictly because he survived so long, you know, and the same could be true of Fred Olen Ray, Dave Dakota. I mean, there's many of these guys that, you know, they found a way to sort of stay within the system and continue to do stuff. And I guess by that definition, I suppose I fit into that parameter, but I don't personally. You know, I was started as a fan of this stuff, and I would make my little short films and stuff in dedication to the things that I liked. And so for me, it's hard for me to go, yes, I'm a living legend. You know, it's an ill-fitting thing for me, but I have stuck it out for all these years. So I guess, you know, that says something.
Totally. Well, have you ever, speaking of conventions, have you done Texas Frightmare, Dragon Con, or some of those other?
I have not done those. I have done, there was a Fangoria show years ago in Texas that I did. I mean, so it's not like I haven't been to those areas before, but, you know, I haven't done Texas Frightmare. I don't know why. I just, I mostly stick to the East Coast, I guess. I'm supposed to be doing a show somewhere in Florida in May. And then I've got, June. And so I have regular shows that I do, Cinema Wasteland in Strongsville, Ohio. That'll be that's twice a year in May and October that I do. I just mostly stick to that. I'm not so big on traveling, you know, unless when I was younger, I did it all the time. I would literally drive cross country, you know, to go to shows, or, you know, from both ends of the country or whatever. So it's not that I wouldn't do them. I guess nobody's offered, and I've never never thought about doing it, I guess. So.
Oh, good. Have you got any?
I'm open to most anything. So.
Okay, cool. Have you got any invites from just other people like Elvira or Joe Bob?
No, not yet. They haven't come knocking on my door. I think they're still working their way through all the higher echelon horror movies.
Yeah.
There's been some discussion over the years about every once in a while I'll have some like sales agents come knocking looking for stuff for like to be riffed, like riff tracks and that kind of stuff, where they're
Really?
so they'll take a look at the catalog. It's like, I think Robot Ninja was the last one that was sort of even being considered, but didn't come to pass. But that would have been funny, just to say you did it.
Man. And you've restored a bunch of other movies, especially Tourist Trap, which was an Empire Pictures favorite back in the day. What are some other special features that you're proud of, aside from obviously when The Dead Next Door got its Anchor Bay DVD release? Have you done some other ones that you look back on fondly? And
I think the proudest one for me is Robot Ninja, which is a movie that is, you either love it or hate it. It was vilified completely when it first came out in late 1989, and the post-production on it was just completely an abomination. It just was, a lot of it was taken out of my hands and finished out in LA and not done to my liking, I guess, let's say. So I spent a lot of years sort of neglecting that movie and ignoring its existence and mocking it at every turn. So when I finally got access to the original cut negative and was able to restore it, we did a lot of, but there's one of the extras on the Blu-ray that talks about how the history of how the movie, what happened to the movie in the late 80s and how it, we wound up finding the negative and restoring it. And the transfer looks amazing. And I was able to do a complete 5.1 surround, rebuild and remix. So the audio is like top notch. And it was sort of a nice, closure, I guess, for that movie after so many years of, it has its fans. There's a group in Germany that loves that movie that have done screenings of it and stuff. And it's not like the movie, is not loved at all. It's just the VHS crowd really goes nuts for that movie for some reason, because they remember, I guess, that box cover, going back to when you first discover it. But being able to restore it back to what I knew it was hoping that it could be, that was very gratifying. So that would be the one, I guess, I would hold up out of all those restorations.
Bro, release the JW cut of
yeah exactly.
Very cool. And have you ever been asked to speak at like just some film festivals, or just
a lot of my stuff I've sort of skirted with film festivals now and again, and not very well known ones. There was years ago, Ozone screened at the Chicago Underground Film Festival, and I went to that. And there was a film festival in Ottawa, Canada that, played Dead Next Door, and, did a little song and dance before that. It's funny because, back in the days, you just had a video projector, and there really was no theatrical for these movies. They were being made direct to video. They were being finished on standard definition video. But since we've been restoring them, and now they're in HD, and you can actually, like, most theaters now have digital projection that is far better than just a regular projector. So you can actually like have screenings now, and as a result, over the last 5 or 6 years, I have been going to a lot of different, there's some theaters here in the area that have done it. There's one coming up in Akron, I think in May, that they're doing their whole Friday night. It's a Friday the 13th screening of Dead Next Door, where I'm going to do a Q&A for it. So it's really cool to be able to do that kind of stuff now after, so many years. People still want to come and sit in a theater and see what they can see at home,
obscure,
on
shocking
Tubi or
movies.
whatever.
Yeah.
So it's neat that people still want to have that theatrical experience, I guess, because these movies didn't have that opportunity back in the day. So for them, it's a new experience.
Totally. Were any of your films ever shown on Showtime or USA Up All Night?
The only one that was ever on nothing on USA Up All Night, although I worked on some movies that did, but the only one that hit Showtime was a documentary that I produced that was written and directed by Jason Paul Collum called Something to Scream About. And it's Brinke Stevens talking to, I think it was like 10 different, Scream Queen type actresses. We had Julie Strain and Denise Duff from the Subspecies movies and people like that. And that actually played, I think, about 2 years on Showtime, which was pretty cool, that one got on there. But none of the features, of course, now that's not even a big deal.
Yeah.
Most people find, I can't tell you how many people have found The Dead Next Door and Robot Ninja recently and Skinned Alive because they're on Tubi. Tubi, a lot of people are tuning in there, or other streaming services, or there's a billion of these Roku channels, and a lot of the stuff's on there.
I guarantee you, Robot Ninja was definitely on Prime. It's just anything on DVD.
Oh yeah. I mean, and Amazon Prime was sort of the start of that, but now it's just gone on to all these other services. So yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. It's amazing to me that anybody finds the stuff when there's so much to watch. Because when I have a huge digital collection, and I frequent a lot of the services, HBO Max and all these kind of things. I have subscriptions to, but just for me to sit down and try and find something to watch, I'll spend 45 minutes before I find anything. And then I usually wind up going to my Blu-ray shelf and just pulling out something I've seen 1,000 times and watch that instead, because I'm just so frustrated. So the fact that anybody is finding any of these movies, to me, is kind of a small miracle.
Oh, people want to navigate and just,
because I think a lot of people are watching it for the first time, just like, oh, what's this? They're just going off that thumbnail art. They're not really getting, back in my day, we had, one sheet posters that were hanging up, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to see this. Now it's this little postage stamp size graphic, and that people are, watching it on their phones or their tablets or whatever. So, it's great for discovering the movies. It's created. I mean, the audience for this stuff is bigger now than it ever was in the video store days, even.
Yeah, it's a second and in some ways third or fourth coming. And like you say, I mean, I've noticed a surge in people who want to find long lost movies or other just cult hits. And I mean, for all the clickbait sites, there's still plenty of them which are, top 10, independent movies and all this stuff like that. And so there's always going to be some kind of obscure or underseen kind of movie that gets some kind of fan base just because, one person took 5 minutes to read some list that someone had compiled.
Right. That's it. Yeah, exactly. And as long as, people are still doing that, that's great. Because that's been always my fear over the years is, as you get the younger generation, maybe they have less film appreciation, than my generation did. Because in my generation, we collected everything we could, posters and toys and comic books and anything that was related to the movies. And a lot of the younger crowd, it's like everything's digital. So you don't have that physical contact with anything. But that said, there are those who didn't get to experience that who are experiencing it now. There's VHS collectors, there's Blu-ray collectors, there's, people that love vinyl and, all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool that stuff exists now.
Totally. More or less, are there any films that has anyone ever even asked you this? What films just inspired you to begin with that just you would be delighted to even host a convention panel for? They have such a huge place in your heart. Yeah, I mean, the first movie that had a dramatic influence. Well, I mean, if I go back to my childhood, my mother used to watch Dark Shadows after I was born, and so I blame her for the fact that I'm into the horror stuff. But growing up, I watched Godzilla movies and all these late night kind of movies like Equinox and things like that. But the first one that really sort of just like leapt off the screen and grabbed my throat was probably Star Wars, of course, because I was 11. I was at the perfect age for that movie and I'm of course referring to the original Star Wars, not all the stuff that came after it. But as far as horror goes, it would be Dawn of the Dead, because and that one was, I had gotten the first issue of Fangoria magazine, and they had an article on Tom Savini with all these graphic color shots of the zombie's head being blown off its shoulder, and
the bite marks and all this stuff, and that just unleashed something in me that I was making like little short films, and they were all kind of science fiction-y at that point. And once I saw that, then it was like everything was about how much ketchup can I spray on the neighbor kids and the my pets and just whatever. It was all like slasher movies kind of stuff, and lots of blood and guts and zombies and all that kind of stuff. So Dawn of the Dead remains to this day my all-time favorite horror movie, and certainly one of the things that influenced me the most, I guess. And I have to bookend that by saying I'm referring to George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, not the one that probably more people have seen at this point, the remake, which was fine actually. The remake, don't mean to disparage the remake, but I of course refer to the original.
Those zombie fans, they can be more temperamental sometimes, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Exactly.
So more or less, have you been tempted to kind of pick Charlie Band's brain a few more times to see if you can help out with his streaming site? Or
No, I had like I said, I worked for Charlie for about 5 years, and chose to sort of walk away from that, just because I wanted to get back to doing my own thing. I was kind of doing my own thing even when I was working for him. I was starting my Tempe DVD label. I just can't. I'm never one of those people that even if I'm working for somebody else, I can't just do that. I have to always be doing something else on the side. Got to have a side hustle, I guess. So, I think I've reached a point now where I don't have time to do anything for anybody. Even if I wanted to, this MakeFlix operation is kind of consuming all of my available waking moments. So I don't think I haven't worked because I've done a lot of oddball things over the years. I'm very proficient with Apple products, the phones, computers, all this stuff. I've reviewed things for different magazines, and I had to give all that up last year because I just don't have time anymore to do the side work. I guess maybe I've gotten older and family's more important and things like that. But thankfully also, my main thing that I'm doing is paying my bills, and that's good. So.
Okay, well, very sweet. Are you active on the Letterbox community?
I'm on there, and I don't write reviews per se because I just never have time. I just use it to sort of log my movies so that I remember what I watched, because I'm at that age, I'm 55 now, that sometimes I forget, and I'll start a movie and I'll like, wait a minute, I've already seen this. And then I'll look back on Letterbox and go, oh yeah, and this October 15th, whatever year that I did watch this movie. So now I can at least I keep a log. That's what it's for me. So I won't say I'm active, but I am on there. So.
Very sweet. Very sweet. So thank you ever so much for doing the time to do this. And
hey, no problem.
I hope, again, with these Tubi streams, you're continually just getting some press.
Yeah, as long as that outlet holds up. It seems like every couple of years there's something new, like it was Netflix, and then it was Amazon Prime, and now it's Tubi. I don't know what'll be after that. It just seems like, the audience shifts from one
anything
thing
filmed
to
on
another.
a phone.
Yeah, exactly. So, hopefully we'll be in the right place, to remain, for the stuff to remain out there. And I try to keep it so that nothing goes out of print forever, or, nothing disappears forever, so that the stuff will remain accessible to those who want to see it.
Totally. So, alrighty. Well, you be safe out there in post-COVID state, and thanks ever so much for this inspiring talk.
No problem. You too, and thanks for having me.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All, sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this movie.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
doll popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be a
could you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our queue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. With the one last plot holes and gratuitous movies. It's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy. At eilfm.podbean.com.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a